Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of What the Haze. This episode we'll be talking about bad writing advice, but also crucially how you can use that to make your writing better. You don't have to just flatly ignore it. First of all, I'm going to give a shout out to some of my downloaders and listeners. So if this is you, thank you so much for listening to the podcast and downloading it. Please feel free to drop me a line, suggest some topics, questions, anything really. So I'm just going to read down. Okay, Kingsport, Tennessee. Thank you so much. Jersey City of New Jersey. There's somebody in Dallas, Texas, Los Angeles, Melbourne, Hong Kong, Glasgow, Istanbul, and Izmir, which is in Turkey. So thank you all for downloading and supporting my podcast. Okay, let's get going. Bad writing advice. I feel like bad writing advice it's more plentiful on the internet than good writing advice. Though in a future podcast episode, I will look at good writing advice. I think with bad writing advice, I think the most important thing is don't reject it outright, but use it to allow you to think. I think that is really crucial, thinking about it. Let's get started. I want to start with AI. I've been getting in a few debates this week, probably for longer than that, especially on threads on Instagram. There's lots of people on there that seem to be one of two extremes. They're either completely in support of AI, where they would use it to, for example, summarize their ideas or brainstorm. And then you get people that reject it completely. I feel like the answer is somewhere in between. In fact, I'm very wary of extremes generally, but I think getting a computer and AI to write something for you is just madness. From a writer's or a creator's point of view, you're not creating, you're not writing. Well, so what? Well, then you're not improving as a writer. You don't get better. And I think over time, that will have a negative impact on your writing. So I do reject that. And I'm a bit wary of, it's a cliche, the slippery slope. I was tempted a while back to give a blog post to an AI, to ChatGPT or DeepSeek, and say, what's wrong with this? Something like that. I didn't do it. I was aware of the slippery slope. I was like, well, that's really good. It's really good. It gives me great advice, and I can publish this, and I get more hits. I think I would just keep using it, and then maybe I would start to use it in other areas. What I am open to is, obviously you might have heard of beta reading, where you hand your novel or chapters, for example, a poem, to some select readers. I'm open to sending it to ChatGPT as part of that process, meaning not the only beta reader, but one of them. I'm open to checking for example, grammar or spelling and stuff, not because you should do that. It's just that we do that already. When I do Microsoft Word, if I spell a word wrong, it underlines it, in red or green or blue. And one of my very last editing checks is to underline, to check all these words. So I'm already doing that anyway. So I don't mind, doing that. Maybe when I send my book off, to make a submission to literary agents, you have to have everything tip top perfect. The smallest thing might mean you get rejected. So I'm open to making sure that submission is absolutely fine. But at the same time, and this is happening already, this process, I'm very wary of maybe homogenizing English, where it's already happening with Microsoft Word, where it doesn't like, the phrase in order to. Every time I write in order to, it underlines it and says, no, just write to. And I'm like, well, I've always written in order to since I was a kid. It's a legitimate English phrase. I don't know why it's been highlighted and flashed up. I don't know. It's one of those things. I think ChatGPT, I think AI will only enhance that kind of thing. And if we're not careful, grammatically incorrect English does have a part to play in writing novels. I've read some of Hemingway's work where he will have run-on sentences. He wrote the book on it, but they all work for him. They all completely work, and he uses "and" as a linking word so many times. And it's like there are rules about how to write fiction or poetry, but the last rule is you've got to know when to break all the rules. And I think that if you use ChatGPT too much, I think that will end. And I just think that we'll just have a very homogenized English. And listen, I think that is already happening. Don't get me wrong. I think we have to be very wary when we make that decision, when we press send or upload to ChatGPT. I think we have to be really conscious of that. AI, it's something that I think about on a daily basis. And I can't say to you, I have a definite opinion. We should do this. I'm always it's a bit like walking through, maybe not quicksand, but ankle deep muddy water, and I can't quite see what's at the bottom, and I'm unsure of my footing. I only know that I have got to keep walking through it. I think completely rejecting AI is wrong. Listen, I know people say it's theft. I'll be honest. I don't care about stuff like that. I'm not on board with that. It's a very strict interpretation of things. I get it. An AI or a big company has scanned all these books, all these works, and is using that to to improve and to write books and to write poems. I do get all that, but that's what we do too. I always think, well, yeah, but that's what humans do. Humans read books, and you go, oh yeah, okay. We buy the books. Yeah, we buy the book. The author doesn't give us permission to use his or her language when we write. And I know we don't write it out exactly, but we do certain things. Let's not kid ourselves. All books build upon what has been written before. So I don't buy the argument that, it's theft. It just doesn't, it just seems, always when I hear that, it just always comes across as ideology. That's what you believe. And if you say it's theft, there's nothing I can say that will convince you otherwise. People say as well, it takes away our skills. Yes, no, maybe. It only takes away your skills if you let it. Listen, I've used some ChatGPT to suggest some podcast titles or blog titles. And I do that because I have a very finite window of when I can record a podcast, write a blog, and then upload it and promote it. And sometimes I just don't have the right ideas at that time, and I have a finite window. If I don't finish it, I've got to go and play with my kid for a while. The idea is lost. Sometimes I will ask ChatGPT, give me some ideas. Sometimes I use them, sometimes I edit them, sometimes I ignore them. But one thing I've noticed is, as I'm using this, it's made me understand what a good title looks like for social media. So I'm learning from the experience, and so it's already, for example, for this episode, the podcast title I've got already. I've got it. I wrote it down a few days ago, and I realized when I wrote it down, I wouldn't have had this quick, snappy title without looking at ChatGPT for other ones. So you can learn from it. But what I also want to say is, if you really believe that it detracts from your skill as an artist or a writer, don't make the point on Instagram, which is, and it's almost completely AI. It's obviously very algorithm driven, but if it's not AI, it's one step below it. It's, I find that a bit silly. But for me, it's like making the argument about, we shouldn't use AI. We should just do it ourselves. That's what being a human's like. If you go back 100 years, being a human was riding a horse. Being a human was writing letters all day to your friends and family spread out around the country and getting replies. People just, they went for walks and they wrote letters. But we don't do that now. Okay, we still go for walks, but we fill our day with other kinds of entertainment. We send social media posts. So things change, things move on. So I think that, again, the argument that, we shouldn't use AI completely 110% in our writing process, or because for me, when I use the phrase writing process, I mean everything. I mean marketing. I mean sending off to agents. Listen, another thing I've done, I've got AI to rewrite hypnosis, and you know what? The AI did it better. Um, I've always struggled with hypnosis. I struggle with, elevator pitch, I'm usually pretty good. I typically do verses, this is Harry Potter in space, or I'm trying to think, one of mine was, this was The Martian versus Mad Max. I do things like that, so people understand what's going to happen. I do that quite well. But if you want me to do a longer elevator pitch, I'm not in marketing. If I was good at that kind of thing, I'd be in marketing now. I'm not. Sometimes as writers, we have to accept that in the modern world, we have to, do so much. We have to write, we have to edit, we have to design pictures for our books, or we get other people to do it for us. We have to promote ourselves. We have to send things to agents that are pretty much close to publishable when we send them. It's not realistic for beginner writers. I'm not a beginner writer, but even then, I'm obviously not published, as in, like, I'm Amazon published, but I'm not traditionally published. There's limits, there's gaps in your ability. And whatever new technology comes out that allows you to fill them and grow, I'm all for it. As to go back to what I was saying before, it is a slippery slope. And I think we have to be mindful of it at all times. But just to reiterate, I reject both extremes. We shouldn't get AI to take the place of the editor to the point where, I'll rephrase that. We shouldn't get AI to take the place of our editing, because this is a crucial point. Because a lot of traditionally published authors, that's what they do. They're writing the book and they're passing it to editors, sometimes on a daily basis. That's what George Martin does. That's completely wrong, because editing is what makes me a better writer. And what I learned, of course, I make the novel I'm writing better. But when I'm doing that, it means that my skill as a writer is improved, so that for the next book, I'm getting better and better and better. And that's why I always recommend editing. I think a lot of, tagging on to bad writing advice, I think editing is downplayed far too often in, how to write books. Stephen King's, On Writing, I think, is a case in point. It's a bit muddy, that bit where he talks about it. And I think editing is, for me, I don't edit all in. That's not a bad writing advice. Stephen King says this. He said, you should edit all in one go. Just, no, treat editing like writing, step by step, slowly, slowly, slowly. Edit a chapter a day. I'll typically edit 1 or 2 chapters a day, depending on which of the drafts I'm doing at the time. As we go further into editing process, I'm reading more and more chapters, because now we're just looking at story and I'm getting a feel for the language I've used. So I don't agree with that. I think that prioritize, like, the writing process far too much. Editing is the most important phase of the book, for sure. Right, let's move on to the next bad advice. Kill your darlings. You might have heard these in workshop groups. It's a very popular phrase. It's very popular in poetry circles, I find. It's something I've been thinking about, I'll be honest, since I was doing my master's degree. And it would come up in a lot of workshops. And I don't disagree with it completely. Yes, sometimes you must kill your darlings. Now, darling is something, just to give you a definition, if you don't know, it's something you really like about your writing. It might be a simile, it might be a metaphor, it might be a speech. I think Kill Your Darlings only works as legitimate criticism when it stands for something else. So, oh, you need to kill your darlings, mate. That it's not the rhyme doesn't work, or you should be rhyming here, or you've used too many similes already in that paragraph, or you've used this simile before, or it's grammatically incorrect. I hope you're following what I'm saying. You have to have a reason. Kill your darlings is just a phrase that should stand for something else. But I find sometimes, I've been in a workshop where this happens, where, the writer defends what they've written. The critiquer is reviewing it and says, right, this is this, this is this, this is this. And then, and the writer's defending them, says, no, I use it because of this. And then, oh yeah, no. You got to kill your darlings. If anyone has heard that, it's not legitimate criticism. That's just saying blah, 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 or because, or wow. It's ridiculous. You can't say kill your darlings for no reason. Well, you've got to kill your darlings. I've read published poems in traditional magazines. There's a magazine in the UK called Agenda, and I read it for a while, and I read a poem, and it had been edited to death. You could just tell anything that was remotely emotional, had just been, anything that was remotely, echoing like maybe Victorian style, emotional poetry was just being edited out of it. And I was just like, there's nothing in this poem. It's just bland. Yeah, I think it really affects modern poetry. Maybe it's because poetry, of course, unlike novels, they're a lot shorter, far shorter. And so maybe people that are reviewing your work, it's easier to focus on something and go, aha, I don't like this. This is too romantic. Get rid of it. But okay, it's too romantic. Why is that a bad thing? Oh, kill your darlings. It's not a reason. Right. Okay. I'm going to move on. This is a big one. You'll see it a lot these days. The idea that, writing shouldn't be offensive to anyone. And this idea of sensitivity readers, whether those are in agents, offices, or in the publishing offices, I find this bizarre. Like, I'm writing a character at the moment, and it's a young adult dystopian novel. And I have started to think maybe it won't get accepted for this reason. And the main character is a female ex-gymnast, and it's in the future. The world's been destroyed. You've got all these like gigantic animals running loose, and she has to escape from these and try to survive. But she's got this terrible dark secret, and unfortunately, she was abused. I say a few years before this, but she's been in a cryogenic chamber for a long time. You'll find out why when I finally do publish the novel, or hopefully it'll get accepted. But she's been sexually abused by her gymnastics coach, and it's based on Jerry Sandusky, and it's based on there's a British paedophile called Jimmy Savile, and it's based on those two characters. Is the coach, and he's literally, his name is Coach for almost all the novel, and only at the end you find out his real name. But I can see a sensitivity. Oh, this would offend some people. This might be a shocking. And the point I want to make is, yeah, I know that's the point. It's trying to alert you to these things that happen, but it's based on these real pedophiles. These people exist, and they negatively affect people years after the abuse is ended. And I really hate books. I read a young adult book, and the teenage protagonist has no problems. I don't know about you. When I was a teenager, I had problems. I was getting bullied. I had very low self-esteem. I thought I was ugly. I thought this. But guess what? You work through it over years, over time, over months, and you get better, and you accomplish things. And ultimately, that's what my book's about. A lot of my books, and I do encourage writers, if you can, to think about themes. When I send a book to an agent now with the synopsis, the first part of my synopsis is always things like, word count, title, name of author. Sometimes I give information about chapters, like is it a countdown format, for example, which I do like to use. but I also write the themes because I want to tell myself, but I want to tell the agent that this book is more than just your typical young adult novel. I'm thinking a bit about what kind of author I want to be, and I always kind of think, oh, like H.G. Wells, where I write a lot of genre fiction, like new adult, young adult, new adult, middle grade crossover of that kind of band I'm typically in. But I don't just want to write books that are like, hey, I've got a publishing contract, I need to write a book, and this is my deadline. I want to have ideas in the book. They are about something. And I want to tell the agent that, hey, if you're looking for something that is just a little bit different and is prepared to offend somebody and to do something that's risky, I'm your man. And there's any agents or publishers out there, I'm your man. Like I will do things that will push buttons, not because I'm trying to create controversy, but because this reflects society. And I think books that are not about anything, that don't offend anyone, it's just propaganda. It's just, what is it? It's just a pamphlet, for want of a better word. So I just think that, the writer Alain de Botton, I can't get his name right, Alain de Botton, he said that writing is thinking. And then you can flip that and reverse it and say thinking is writing. And then I think that says to me that if you're not prepared to be offensive, because, we're all individuals. For some people, the color red's offensive because it reminds them of a past childhood trauma, but that doesn't mean they should have the right to stop you wearing a red t-shirt, for example. I think that if you find something offensive, don't read the book. Maybe what I would like you to do is think, stop, kind of almost exit the book, stand back a bit, think about, why are you offended? What is your position to this? And that's good. You don't have to agree with the writer. I'm not suggesting that. But sometimes the best books I've read are the ones where I don't actually agree with. And I go, no, wait. And I step back from the page a bit and I go, and I try to think about it in my own head about what it means. That's what you have to do. Not being offensive. It's like 1984, the bit with the rats. If you pass that through sensitivity, it's, oh, it's cruelty to animals. Or Boxer in Animal Farm. If you haven't read it, you should have read it. I've read it 4 or 5 times, so please catch up. He's turned into tin food. Oh, I find that offensive. That upsets me. I'm a horse lover. Tough. You don't get to dictate to millions. I think it's really bad advice, and it's bad precedent set by publishers. Right, this is the next one. This is a great one. You'll have heard this before. It's been proposed a lot by Stephen King. Write 2,000 words a day. I absolutely don't agree with this. There's been times in my life where I have written 2,000 words a day, and it was probably about 10 years ago. Why? I had the time. When I was writing my first book, Jack Strong and the Red Giant, which you can buy, by the way, I was writing 2,000 words a day. Why? Well, I didn't have to go into school until about 11 a.m. So I'd wake up and I'd just have 2-3 hours a day. Just writing every day. It was fantastic. But ever since then, I had more difficult jobs where I had to be in the office, not just in the classroom. And that's my time for writing narrowed down to the point where it's kind of reached, what it is today, which is about an hour and a half a day. I'm a big believer in don't write for the sake of it. Also, don't burn yourself out. If you do write 2,000 words a day, over time, you'll just burn yourself out. I think Stephen King, listen, he's a great writer, let's just be honest. But I think he has to be a little bit more honest with himself more than anyone else. Writing 2,000 words a day as a novice writer is very dangerous. You can burn yourself out. You can make yourself sick. He was drinking a lot when he was doing that. That's not acceptable. That's not the right way. He knows it's not the right way to write. And he can do it now because he's a full-time writer. I think it's just a bit, it's easy when you're top of the mountain to shout down to those at the bottom and say, hey, come on, you lazy sod, what are you doing? Maybe you're forgetting how you got up there. Maybe you got a lift up there. Maybe you got a helicopter. Maybe it took you years to get up there. So I think sometimes it has to be rethought. When it comes to bad writing advice, in this case, for 2,000 words a day, I always go back to Hemingway. Hemingway, if you haven't read him, he's still one of the best writers around. If you can, read his book, A Movable Feast. I think it's the best actual book on writing. And it is more of a memoir, don't get me wrong, but he goes back to the writing process and he says sometimes he said he finds writing difficult because he's trying hard, and he says sometimes all he can do is write one paragraph a day, and it's something I take to heart. And so if I'm writing, if I think I'm writing badly, if I feel like I'm tired, if I feel like I'm a little bit disengaged from my writing and my editing, which can happen, everybody's human, I step back and I go, you know what, just shrink my goals. Maybe not. Sometimes I have gone into writing and gone, you know what, if you just get one paragraph done today, that's fine. And guess what? I always write more, maybe a page and a half. The editing, just try to get one page edited and I get more done. Shrink your goals. That's one thing I do recommend. Shrink your goals if you're finding it tough. I've seen there's people out there that'll say like, oh, I can't write. I've not written in a while. Write one sentence. Write one word, and then write the next one, and you'll get better. Again, someone else said this, something like, it's okay to write badly. So if you accept that you're going to write badly, you'll probably find that you won't, and that you will write quite good, and you'll write better. So yeah, writing 2,000 words a day, I think it's nonsense. Just incidentally, J.K. Rowling writes 300 words a day. George Martin, 300 words a day. I write, my average is about 700, so I'm always above them. And 700 is really a good place for me. I typically write chapters that are about 700 words, so I typically try to write a chapter in one sitting, but these are short chapters, they're very punchy. But sometimes I'll write a bigger chapter spread over effectively several days. So when I sit down to write, it's probably a range from 300 words to 1,000, with the average being about 700. And I'm happy with that. And this is another thing as well. We write so many words a day and we write so many times a week so that we can finish our books. And I write 700 words a day for about an hour a day. And guess what? I finish writing the first draft of a novel in 3 to 4 months. I only write between 50,000 and 60,000 words. I do write quite short novels. And then I take a little break and do other things, of course. And then I go back and I edit. And the editing phase, probably similar, 3 or 4 months. Right now, I've been editing my current book for 2 months. And it'll probably be more likely 3 months. But my current book is a little bit short compared to my other books. It's like 47,000 words. And in the editing process, I've added to it. So let's move on. So write what you think is a comfortable amount for you, so long as you are finishing your book. I mean, to be honest, if you're writing a gigantic fantasy novel, it's for George Martin, you probably do need to write more than 300 words a day, because it will take you years and years and years. And I think there's always the danger then, well, how do you edit it? Oh, well, it takes you years and years and years. I think, you have to remember that you got to finish things. Right, let's move on. Okay, this is one thing I got from my MA workshops. Only read contemporary fiction and poetry. Is absolutely nonsense. The idea behind this is, well, if you want to get published, you should only read contemporary fiction and poetry to see what's being published out there. Agents are partly responsible for this too. They need calling out. Every time, I'll check out the agent's, bio page. They'll say, "Oh, the books I've read recently are," and they're all books that have been published recently in the last year or two, and it just reinforced that message. But I'm a big believer in what Elizabeth Barrett Browning, the Victorian poet, said, that if you want to get good or better at writing, you should only read great books. Now, I don't agree with that entirely. I still think you do need to read some contemporary fiction. If you're a children's writer, you should be reading Harry Potter. You should be reading some books that have been published this year. I do. I always do. But I'm a big believer in reading around. Why? You never know where the next great idea comes from. And I'm a big believer in, if you only read contemporary fiction, it's a bit like chasing the dragon. You're chasing this thing and you're just copying. That's boring. And again, I don't like, when you have to make submissions to agents and they'll ask you, name 3 or 4 titles that are similar to this. I'm like, I try to be a bit different. It's young adult dystopian fiction. There are similarities in a tangent to The Maze Runner and The Hunger Games, but I wouldn't say they're alike, because they're not. I always try to do more than The Maze Runner and The Hunger Games, because I think that they pull their punches, and I try to do more. But yeah, I've always found that really bizarre. I do recommend, there's another thing about, reading great fiction. I think a lot of great fiction's also got great ideas, great themes, and you start to incorporate this in your work. I've been reading a lot of George Orwell, and I love George Orwell. He's my favourite writer. And I don't necessarily mean Animal Farm and 1984. Those are the obvious ones, and they're great books. I think my favourite book of all time is Homage to Catalonia, which is about when he goes to Spain to fight the fascists in the Spanish Civil War. And he goes there as this, naive, socialist, and he leaves it an anti-communist. And the transformation is fantastic. And it gives me the idea that when we write, it doesn't matter what we write, what kind of fiction we need, even if it's really young children's fiction, what's it about? That's what any writer I interview, what's it about? Yeah, and that's the story. What are the ideas? What is it saying about what we should do? Or maybe what is it saying but that we actually do? So moving on. This is another one. I got this from Stephen King in his book on writing. Don't be into sports, as in watching them. I find that a bizarre one. Again, you never know when that passion for sports is going to come in handy. You never know when, you know what, I'm going to write a character and he's going to be into sports, and you're going to know everything about sport because you're following that sports team. You might be into sports and, put it into a novel. I follow football, soccer, as you say in America. In my zombie novel, Deadfall, which I do need to publish online. I did do a podcast about it at one point. I had it was all about football hooliganism. And I was using my experiences when I used to go to watch Burnley Football Club. No, I wasn't a football hooligan, but it made it easier to kind of imagine the crowd scene and what was going on. Far, far easier. So it makes you realize, if you're into sports, you never know when. If you're into anything, crochet, for example, you never know when you will use it in a novel. This is another one. This is a real popular one. You get these a lot in like those small how to write books you can probably find on Amazon. Write for like a whole day or a whole week. And when I say a whole day or a whole week, I mean every hour. I don't agree with this at all. I've tried it. I have tried it, and this is what happens every time. You burn yourself out like a candle, and you get tired. You might even get sick, and you don't actually write for a few days afterwards. It doesn't work. For me, the best thing to do is just to write steadily. Just be like a gently flowing river. As I was saying about getting a certain number of words done a day, just this, just that, just that. Just keep going. you know what I do as well? I'm so close to finishing the novel. Do a mama session just to finish it? I'm tempted. I never do. I just no. I'm like no. I'll come back tomorrow and finish it then because that's just what I do. And I feel that actually this way I get sick less. When I was really flying at novels and writing certainly 2,000 words a day, I'd get sick sometimes and I just couldn't write for 2 or 3 days a week, and that holds you back. So I do think it affects you negatively in the long term. I'll give you another one, and this one is write only in a notebook and not on a computer. This is a strange one because I feel like lots of indie writers, lots of writers from, should we say, the new generations, that's what they do. But yeah, Stephen King, sorry, no, pardon me, I'm wrong. Chuck Palahniuk, I can't get his last name right to save my life. And Neil Gaiman, they talk about writing in notebooks a lot. I don't agree with that. I think whatever you do as a writer, you've got to find where are you comfortable? What makes you, right? If climbing El Capitan and hanging upside down is good for your writing, do it. Of course, it's highly unlikely that that would happen. But if you find writing on a computer to be comfortable and therefore you can then write X amount of words a day and then get the novel finished, great. I mean, I met Neil Gaiman said, and again, I really like Neil Gaiman. I can't talk about Chuck Palahniuk. I've not read any of his books, but Neil Gaiman, great writer. Really admire him as a writer, and he's got a lot of great things to say about writing. But he said that it's like if you write in your notebook, oh, you can really change things and alter things and mess with the words. And I'm like, dude, you do that when you're typing. And I would argue you do it more. In my current book, I just finished one edit and I took a speech from, I think, I don't know, page 150 and put it in page 200. You can just do that by not just copying and pasting and flicking back and forth. I'm not sure. Do you do that when you're writing in a notebook? I'm not convinced you do, I'm really not convinced you do. But yeah, when you're doing it like that, for me, you've got to be comfortable. Do what works for you. If it's writing on a phone, do it. Right, this is another one. This is what Stephen King has said. Don't write your ideas down. Let them percolate around, and the great ones always last. Yeah, I don't agree with that. What I would say is to writers out there, are you good enough? Are you great enough not to do that? I would argue, and it's more likely that the answer is no. You never know when you've run out of ideas and you flick through the idea. I write my ideas on a phone. I've got about 200 and odd ideas, most of which are never going to see the light of day. But they're there, and every now and again I flick back through them and I write extra ideas down. You never know when I've got no ideas, I've got nothing new, I need to write a novel, I've got a deadline coming up. You never know when you can flick back through. Oh yeah, this is a bit different. I haven't done this before. I'll do that. So the idea of not writing your ideas down, I think's completely wrong. I would make the argument about Stephen King. He was a great writer between like 1975 and late 90s. That's fantastic. Wow, 20 years at the top of his craft. And I've not read all of his work recently, but the books I have read, which was, I forgot his name now, Dr. Sleep and The Outsider. These are two highly recommended books, highly regarded books. I found them very disappointing. I thought Dr. Sleep starts so well. I mean, the first 100 pages, I think the first 100 pages are just dynamite. Absolute dynamite. Wow, it's fantastic. Amazing. And then the time jumps start and it just unravels. But I could talk about time jumps. I mean, time jumps are the most overrated, overused, like, plot technique. I tend to believe when you're skipping time, it's just you've just run out of ideas. It's a bad excuse to not carry on with the story. I'm very, very anti time jumps. That's different to flashbacks, by the way. Yeah, and The Outsider, I just found it quite disappointing, but it was good in parts. In parts, good. Stephen King's got great language. That's another thing that people don't appreciate about Stephen King. His language is really good, and he's a lot better than I say other contemporary thriller or horror writers. Far better. But I think if he was to write down his ideas now, it might not work because a lot of writing is about hunger. A lot of art in general is about hunger. Like maybe sometimes, yeah, being physically hungry. If you are physically hungry, you need to write or make art to feed yourself. You will just do it, and you'll put the emotion you get from that. You put all your heart and soul into it. And also, you've got to be hungry to get published or to get accepted by the media or by the mainstream. And so that goes into your work. When you've made it, what are you writing about? You live in a mansion with a swimming pool. What are you writing about? I have this phrase in my head, which is like, great novels, great fiction. It's not written in first class. It's in coach. I live in China, as probably many of you know, and I like to get buses and trains and metros everywhere. I've always done it, and I find out so much about the people, so much every time. And I wrote an entire poetry collection out of it. But if I'm in business class, I don't know anything. You go, oh, that's how the rich people live. Great. So even if you're rich, some of you out there might be loaded. Try going in economy. Try it. Look at the people. Take a notebook, write down some ideas. You never know. You might get some really great ideas. Okay. This is a good one. Reading. I've heard a few writers. This has been recently and in the past on podcasts saying, and they're interviewed. Yeah, usually they're interviewed, and they'll say something like this. Yeah, actually, I don't write too much. So I don't read too much because I'm doing a podcast or I'm writing a book or I write a lot. It's absolute rubbish. It's absolute rubbish. Reading is writing, writing is reading. It's a vital part of the process. It's a dichotomy. It's one half of the whole. And I think if you don't read, maybe not straight away, you might not notice the decline in quality straight away. Over time, it will come back and it will start to affect your writing. There's a writer I'm thinking of, I can't remember his name now, and he was interviewed and he did say this in an interview. And his books are starting to decline in quality. And he's only getting published now because, what's his name? I've forgotten his name. I wish I could get his name. But you start to notice the decline in quality in his books. I don't think sell as well now. That's the thing I get. So yeah, you have to read as a writer. You have to be, sometimes you have to be prepared to read. And what does that mean? It means you don't have time. You don't have time, but you read 20 minutes. Just something. Last week, I've got a young family and I was very pushed for time. Oh, there were some days, I'm not joking, I'm getting 2 minutes, 5 minutes reading done. And it's a very long novel. I'm reading David Copperfield by Dickens, and it's a very long novel. And I need to read a lot a day just to finish it. It's dragging on a bit. It's a very good book, but it is a long book. But it's like, you have to make that effort. If you're a published writer and you're saying, I don't have time to read, it's absolute rubbish. You'll be going around the country or countries around the world doing book tours and book signings. Read on the plane, read on the bus. Something I've done that's bad in the past is that, I catch planes. If I get a short plane ride, I'll always read a novel. I always read in the airport. I always read when I'm coming out of the airport. When I'm on the plane these days, actually, I used to watch movies. Now, if you're listening, my son's about to come into the room. Hello, you, Dan? Yeah, Daddy's doing a podcast. Yeah. There we are. So obviously I'll be finishing soon because this is a good thing about writing and reading. My son's just come in and I'm trying to find time around my family. An old friend of mine, she had a child. This is years and years ago. And I said, "Oh, you're still writing?" "No, I have no time." And I was like, "You can make time." "No, no, I have no time." You can make time. And my time is in the period before my son wakes up, and now he's woken up. My time is going down. But I'll try to say one more thing. Um, oh, this is a good one. Write when sick. Terrible idea. Write when sick. First of all, you'll write bad stuff because you're sick. You're not at your best. You can barely see the screen. Okay, you're best off just stop writing. Oh, and by the way, if you write when sick, you make yourself worse. So actually, your sickness lasts. This idea that when you're writing that you're somehow not burning calories, or it's not energy, or it's not living in some. It's absolutely ridiculous. If you're sick, stop. Stop. It's better to stop and be wrong and take a day off writing. You never know. You might not be as bad as you thought, but maybe you needed a break. Maybe that's the universe's way of telling you, "Hey, mate, you needed a break." But when you're sick, just stop, get better. Maybe if you can, yeah, read a bit, catch up on some TV programs, things like that. Okay. Next one. Um, yeah, it's this one here. This is from an author called Tim Ferriss. You might have heard of him. He does a lot of. I think he's got quite a big presence on social media, but I'm a bit like, well, you're not George Orwell. I think he thinks he's George Orwell, but he's not listening. I'm sure he's a nice guy. He's obviously got his bit. He's very successful. Congratulations. He says, make writing the book the most serious thing in your life. And it's echoing this idea that you write a million words a day. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone has an au pair or a nanny or a wife or kids. Understand, oh, where's daddy? Oh, he's disappeared for 3 months. He's just writing. You can't do that. You have to get the balance right. Writing is something you do all the time. Tim Ferriss as well, by the way, also said he was on a podcast and he was like, he's not from New Zealand. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm writing my first book in 6 years." I'm like, what? That's not writing. You might write 4 or 5 books that way, don't get me wrong. That's not writing. That's different from writing and editing. If you're writing and editing a book every 6 years, that's not what I mean. I mean, you're writing a book, you finished it, you do other things for 6 years, and you write another book. Not for me. I think being an author, being a writer, being a poet, it's the act of sitting down every day and churning it out. That's the real dedication. Um, yeah, this is I think is it a professor? He's a story expert. It's called Michael Dean in America. Some of you might have heard of it. I'm not saying he's completely wrong. He recommends following strict guidelines or templates for writing a novel. It's absolute rubbish. I, I've seen this cropping up around. I listen to a lot of like YouTube podcasts, and I like a lot of what Brandon Sanderson says. But it seems to be kind of people seem to be giving this advice. "Oh, I want to write a novel, or I want to write another novel." And people recommend the hero's journey and things like that. This might be true. Don't set out to write to a template. Write a story what you want to tell. Now, don't get me wrong. The story you write might then fit into a template. It probably will. But I don't believe you should set out doing that. I just think if you do that, it will be artificial, or to a degree, to a large degree, artificial. Always write from the heart. Always write characters and stories and worlds that you really believe in. And if they conform to the hero's journey or another template, so be it. But don't set out trying to write to this model or that model. Okay. I want to get through one more. This is another one about. This is the last one. I think we can finish now. Outlining. A lot of people, I see it on threads a lot. They're very into not outlining. And when I say outline, for me, an outline, it's very scrappy 2 or 3 grammatically incorrect paragraphs that I write down to go from the beginning to the end, main character or two, brief, brief motivations. That's it. But that's a sufficient guideline. And what I always do then is the next day or the next chapter I'm going to write, I briefly write down, very briefly, 2 or 3 sentences, what I'm going to write about. Most of the time, I actually don't do that. I do something else. But I find I need a signpost. Now, the other idea is don't do that. Just wing it, as we call it. Just wing it. Now, what I want to say about this is, and a lot of people, I think, online are winging it, and Stephen King wings it. And I would say this, are you good enough not to plan? Are you good enough not to outline? I think the most obvious answer is no, you're not. I'm not. I'm definitely not. Stephen King's not, because, as I said, his last few books are not great. The best writing, just do a little bit of planning. That's what I'd say. Right, I'm going to end it there. I've got to go to my young family. Join me next week. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next week. There's a chance it might be an interview. If not, I'm going to do good writing advice, which is perhaps more important. Okay, but thank you everybody for listening and downloading. Again, if you can drop me a like, if you can drop a message, it would be very much appreciated. Thank you.